Hey guys, PlasmaXL here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the finally announced Kamisato Ayato. This is super exciting, I cannot wait to get to play him in summon form in 2.6. Update 2.5 looks super promising with Yaimiko being the first banner of 2.5 as well. Today we're going to run through all the possibilities that MiHoYo could give Ayato's kit in order to make him one of the best characters in Genshin Impact to date, as well as my speculations on what they're most likely to do with him. Let's get started. So far, we only know that he'll be a Hydro character and likely a one-handed sword user. At the very least, he'll be able to use some type of move that uses the awesome katana they put into his promotional images. Let's start by going over possible archetypes that he could be. First thing we should consider is whether or not he'll be an on-field hypercarry like Child or an off-field sub-DPS like Xingqiu, Mona, or even Kokomi. If you want more information on character archetypes, you can refer to my explained in 10 minutes or less video on it. With the sheer number of Hydro characters with off-field kits, I find it more likely that MiHoYo will be leaning towards hypercarry route for Ayato. We'll consider both possibilities for now, but as said earlier, based on his promotional image, at the very least he's got a talent similar to Raiden or Ito's Burst. I'm hoping that that's his skill instead, but we never know. In the event, Ayato's kit is designed to be an off-fielder, which I feel is unlikely. As long as he's able to crit and has decent Hydro application, I think he'd be a pretty decent option. Overall, unless he's doing crazy numbers, I think this would largely be a waste of his potential though, especially since Kokomi is currently actually pretty effective and isn't bad despite not being able to crit, and Xingqiu also works phenomenally well. As you can see in my Abyss run footage, both Kokomi and Xingqiu pair well with a lot of current top tier meta teams. Could they make Ayato as a replacement in freeze teams to pair well with Ayaka because they're siblings? Possibly, but I doubt it. MiHoYo surprised me before. In the more likely case that Ayato's kit is centered around being on the field, now he has the possibility of competing with Child. Let me start off by saying Child is really good at what he does, which in his case is applying an insane amount of Hydro and doing cluster AoE damage. Despite how good he is at those things, therein lies the problem. Because of his amazing Hydro application, he's usually the one enabling reactions and not the one performing them. So until a crazy Pyro applier comes along, Child will never be the character carrying the team, despite being the on-field hypercarry. His other problem is more situational. As of late, and through most of the Inazuma enemies, they've been on the larger side, they get knocked back easily, and they have a lot of health. Since Child damage comes in medium-sized AoE clusters where the damage hits repeatedly and adds up, he has a lot more difficulty clearing content at the moment than pretty much all the other on-field hypercarry characters. He's sort of in the same situation as Venti, as many of the new characters cannot be crowd controlled as easily. Ayato has the potential to shake up the meta in a number of ways as a hypercarry. If his attacks and ICD are on the slower side, he has the potential to vaporize every single hit, and then given his numbers, he'd be one of, if not the best DPS character in the game. Unfortunately, I'm afraid if MiHoYo attempts this, it could flop because of the elemental gauge theory. You can check out my EG theory explained video in the description if you don't know what that is. Basically, even if his attacks are slow, since forward vaporize eats up more pyro than the other way around, it might be impossible with the current pyro characters available to give him consistent vaporized hits. One way to avoid that and still give him vaporized hits would be to give him something similar to Xingqiu's Hydro Slash for a skill, and something like Child's Strong Burst for his burst. So that way, even though he isn't constantly doing Hydro damage for all of his numbers, he would still double all of his hits with Vaporize. If they did this, as long as the cooldowns are on the shorter side, but not instant, this would make him really fun to play, be a pretty unique playstyle we haven't seen in characters before, and possibly a shift in meta. The other hypercarry option for a Hydro hypercarry would be Electrocharge teams. Although I prefer a good forward vape comp, this is probably the most likely course of action for MiHoYo. Since Inazuma, there's been a big shift away from Vaporize and Melt teams, and since Inazuma is the Electro Archon's domain, a lot of Electro, Hydro, and Animo characters released from there have had a predisposition to dish out a lot of instances of transformative reactions. As a hypercarry, Child already completes this role very well. Ayato would need to do large and fast slashes in his Hydro stance and possibly scale with something like Elemental Mastery to make him worth using over Child for those teams. With Yaimiko's announcement and no official numbers for her kit being announced yet, I wouldn't be surprised if they made Ayato's kit designed to pair phenomenally well with Yai. They did similar thing with Yoimiya and Raiden. Unfortunately, that was at the cost of Yoimiya's kit, and it gave her ICD issues, but that's a rant for another day. If you want more information on ICD or internal cooldown, you can check out my 10 minutes or less video on that. There is an off chance they will make Ayato a healer and scale with healing bonus. With the direction Mihoyo has been going with mono Geo teams and mono Cryo team viability, I also wouldn't be too surprised if they decided to make Ayato buff Hydro or deal bonus damage based on if the enemies were wet or inflicted by other elements as well. Even though we don't know much, it's very excited to finally be getting a new sword character and a new Hydro character to boot. Rip Shing Show. There were a few other directions I think Ayato could go, but these were the main ones I thought were most likely. This is actually my third writing of the script for this video because I kept going off on alternative possibilities, and the whole thing just didn't feel coherent to me. Overall, we are able to cover his kit's options and try to predict which characters Mihoyo is planning on making him run really well with. If you have any conflicting opinions on things, I'd love to hear them in the comments or in my Discord. Links in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.